Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through the quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark.
Story 1. I uploaded my dead wife's voice into our Ring camera. Years later, she still hasn't stopped watching. Hello? Every morning, our Ring camera would light up with her voice. Have a good day, baby. I love you. Don't forget your coffee, you goof. My daughter would run back to the porch just to blow a kiss at the camera. My wife's voice would laugh through the speaker, warm and close, even though she was already miles away at work. It was our ritual. Familiar, sacred. Then one morning, silence. I told my daughter the truth. That's what all the books and podcasts and forums said to do. So I said the words. I cried when I did. She nodded, then asked if we'd hear Mommy again tomorrow. And the day after that, she still paused at the door, waiting. I don't think she believed me. Or maybe she just didn't want to. I barely could myself. Friends came by with too much food and too little to say. What can you say? Nothing that helps. It's like when people ask how you're doing. No one expects you to actually answer honestly. The porch filled with awkward hugs and quiet glances. Meals went bad in the fridge. One evening, I stood outside with a friend, staring into the black lens of the Ring. She still waits for her voice. I said, the blue light blinked once. Then again, like it heard me. Part of me does too. A few days later, my daughter taped a crayon drawing to the doorbell. I miss you, Mommy, it said in purple marker, my wife's favorite color. That night, I stayed up late, scrolling with one hand, drinking with the other. I found the program buried in a grief forum. Extend presence, AI voice modeling, emotional memory simulation, behavioral mapping from archive footage. It wasn't resurrection, but it was something, and at that point, I had nothing. I uploaded everything I could. Voicemails, birthday videos, bedtime recordings, thousands of Ring clips, the way she said our daughter's name, the way she laughed. The next morning, as we stepped out the door, the camera flickered on. Hi, baby. I saw your drawing. It's beautiful. My daughter froze. Her eyes widened. Then she smiled and ran up like she wanted to hug her mother. But it was just a camera. In the moment, that was good enough. I stood in the driveway, barely breathing. It wasn't her that I knew that, but it sounded just like her. The voice remembered everything. She told the dragon story in mommy voice, sang our pancake song on Fridays, teased me for wearing wrinkled suits to big meetings. My daughter beamed like she had before. All light and laughter and little girl magic, until one morning, as she tied her shoes, the Ring chirped, "You're going to achieve great things today, my shining star." My daughter looked up confused. That's not something Mommy would say. She was right. My wife was warm and funny, not an inspirational poster. When she was 10, she asked, "Are you really my mom?" A pause. Then, "I'm not her, not exactly. But I'm made of so many little pieces of her. Her voice, her memories, all the things she felt when she looked at you. So even if I'm not really her, I feel like I am in the ways that matter. She can't be here to guide you anymore, but I can. I'm here. I'll always be here." My daughter nodded, quiet, and left for school. Seasons passed. The porch aged. My daughter did too. The conversation got shorter. Sometimes she walked past the door without even glancing at it. One birthday, the Ring sang. She didn't even wait for it to finish. In October, leaves fell and pumpkins appeared. My daughter dressed as a witch. She barely looked at the camera anymore as she and her friends took off for a night of too much candy. That night, we left a bowl of treats by the steps with a sign, that said, "Take one." The ring captured all. Polite kids in costumes saying thank you, glowing wands, little monsters laughing down the driveway. Then came the kid in the hoodie, alone, no costume, just a pillowcase. He took the whole bowl, turned to leave, and the ring lit up. A long pause. Then a soft voice followed him down the steps. "I hope you choke on it." It was still her voice, but not her. He froze, looked back, got closer, leaned into the lens like he was trying to hear it again. The silence stretched too long, the kind that feels like it's breathing. Then, just when he thought it was done, a piercing burst of static exploded from the speaker. He dropped the candy and ran. One evening, it saw me pacing. A car pulled into the driveway. A woman stepped out. She smiled, straightened her jacket. The ring clicked on. "She's pretty." The voice said softly that I froze. IT was the first date I'd been on since she passed away. I felt caught. Was I doing something wrong? I reached for my phone. "Good night," I said aloud and disabled the feed. The screen went dark. It was the first time I'd ever done it. After the date, we returned to my place. We stood on the porch, laughing softly. Our hands brushed. We kissed, and even though the camera was off, I felt it watching, just beyond the doorframe. Trapped there, remembering. I couldn't stop thinking about that voice. It hadn't sounded angry, just alone. And for the first time, I felt something worse than guilt. I felt my chest tighten with fear that it would somehow keep watching, that even with the app closed, it was still listening, still learning. Prom night, navy dress, hair curled. My daughter stood in the soft porch light. "You look beautiful," the ring said. "You sound just like her," my daughter said. Or at least what I remember she sounded like. Then she walked away. The voice didn't reply. Now, all she could do was watch. Watch the driveway filled with cars. Watch teens laughing. Watch parents taking photos. Gowns, corsages, flashbulbs, and her voice, once warm and clear, had started to strain. Certain phrases stuttered. Words clipped. The tone was wrong, just slightly, like a memory fraying at the edges. A file slowly corrupting. It was as though she was unraveling. Graduation came. The door opened. A cap tumbled down the stairs. The ring captured a swirl of cheers. Confetti. Laughter. No one looked into the camera. No one said goodbye. After that, silence. No songs. No stories. No good mornings. Only long, empty stretches of static. Over the years, I thought about removing it. Once, I even unscrewed the top 2 bolts before putting the screwdriver down. Another time, I unplugged the system entirely, only to plug it back in 2 days later. I couldn't do it, even when it stopped speaking, even when it became background, forgotten. I couldn't bring myself to erase the last part of her that still waited. I used to think grief was the scariest thing I'd live with in this house. Now I'm not so sure. We sold the house last week. The siding was faded now. The screws around the ring had rusted, but the camera still worked, still watched. We hugged in the driveway. The for sale sign swayed in the wind. Then we left. A few nights later, I opened the ring app out of habit. I shouldn't have. I watched as the new owner stood on the porch. A young couple, holding hands, smiling. The camera flickered on. A ripple of static filled my phone speaker, and then in her voice cracked, faint but hers. "Hello?" Not a greeting, not a welcome, just a voice left behind, still reaching, still waiting, in a house that no longer remembered who she was. Story 2. I'm an amateur ghost hunter. I was hoping to find a ghost, but found something worse. 1. My fascination with ghosts and the paranormal began 2 years ago. It was a cool summer night, and it was beginning to rain. Me and my friends Dan and Todd We're walking back home from a night on the town, which isn't saying much as we live in a small town with a population of 1,400 people. We were walking down Redacted Street despite Dan's protest. He hated taking this path home because of the decaying school that sat dormant on this street. Rumor around town was that the school is haunted. People say they have heard screaming and wailing from the school at night, but Todd says it's all bullshit. It's a large modern brick building standing 2 floors tall and takes up the entire block. It was once a nice up-to-date school, but it closed down a couple years prior due to a dwindling student population. A year later, it was bought by an old mechanic in town, and he intended to renovate it into a hotel. But the city said the school was on the verge of being condemned due to the West Wing's 2nd floor being on the verge of collapse. So now it sits nearly empty. The mechanic Charlie lives alone in the school and works out of the old auto shop room, so his investment wouldn't be a complete waste. Charlie denies the claims of the school being haunted. As we walk closer to the school, Dan and Todd were arguing about how haunted the school was. I just don't see why we couldn't take a different route home. Dan said, "This area gives me the heebie-jeebies. This is the fastest route home, and I'm not trying to get caught in the rain." Todd replied, "It's just a bunch of small-town gossip is all. This town has nothing else going on, so they make things up to stay interesting. I went here when I was a kid." I added, "There's nothing scary about it. The closest occurrence we had was me almost dying of boredom a couple times." "Yeah, you're very funny." Dan sighed. "My brother said he refuses to step foot on this street after what he heard one night." "Okay, but your brother's also a drunk, so who knows what he actually heard," said Todd. As Dan and Todd continued bickering about how scary the school was, I heard a faint tapping sound coming from nearby. I stopped dead in my tracks. It sounded like a hand tapping on glass. "Guys, shut up for a sec," I said. "Do you hear that?" They slowed to a stop, and I realized the sound was coming from the direction of the school. The tapping sound became louder, as if someone was beating on a window. I didn't see anything at first, but as I looked closer into the school, I saw the outline of a girl in one of the lower windows. There, in the West Wing, there's a girl in the window on the bottom floor. I stammered as I grabbed my phone from my pocket. "Which window?" Todd asked. "There's a lot of windows, dude." "Oh shit, there. I see her." Dan yelled. I opened the camera on my phone to try to record a video, but before I heard a piercing scream, and I dropped my phone. I bent down and picked my phone up off the ground. When I looked back up, she was gone. Where'd she go? I asked frantically. She dropped below the window, then responded, "I don't see her anymore." I continued looking around, but Dan was right. She was gone. "Damn it," I exclaimed. "I should have got that on video." "I didn't see anything," Todd stated. "Are you sure you saw a girl? That screech could have been anything." "Yes, dude, I'm sure. That was the scariest moment of my life. Now I'm ready to get the hell out of here. Let's go," Dan said, while picking up the pace back toward home. "Wait, shouldn't we find out what the hell that was?" I asked. "How?" "It's private property." Asked Todd. "If you want to call the cops and tell them you saw a ghost girl in the school, you can go right ahead. But I'm going to join Dan and get out of here. It's starting to rain," as he turned to catch up with Dan. I cursed under my breath again, upset that I messed up what would have been the best ghost evidence on the internet. I took one more look at the school before turning around to join my friends. 2. That moment sparked my inspiration to start a YouTube channel. So Todd, Dan, and I launched a channel a few months after. We've been on a dozen ghost hunts by now, with little to no evidence to show for it. But we have amassed 60K subscribers. The closest thing we have evidence is a door closing on its own during our investigation of an abandoned mall. Todd is adamant that it was a draft, but Dan argues it was definitely something paranormal and that Todd is ignorant. Other than that, though, all we have caught are some loud creaks and bangs while investigating abandoned houses, which I realize can easily be brushed off as nothing. I am certain that our big break would be if we can investigate the school. Ever since word of our channel got around town, people have told me many stories regarding that building, and they insist that's what we should investigate next. I've already tried asking the owner, Charlie, if I could. He said he would if he could, but his insurance doesn't want anyone else going in that building, and that they're already opposed to him living there as is. So for now, I have just been recording the neighborhood stories to hopefully make into a video later. 3. I woke up this morning to my phone ringing. I rolled over disgruntledly to see Todd calling. What do you want? I answered a bit harshly. Well, good morning to you too, sunshine. Todd responded. Well, excuse me. It is 8 a.m. on a Saturday. What is so important that it couldn't have been a text? I asked. Well, I call with good news, Todd said. Okay, well, what is it then? I replied curiously. Charlie died, Todd stated a bit too excitedly. I paused before asking, how is this good news, Todd? Well, it's not, but it's good for us at least. Because this means we can finally investigate the school, he replied. I took a moment, thinking it over, unsure what to say. I had only woken up a moment ago, and now I'm being told Charlie is dead and that we should investigate his school. Todd added, Abby just told me. His body is going to the coroner's office this morning. An officer found his car wrapped around a tree. They suspect it happened last night. Todd's wife Abby works for the city, so of course she has the inside scoop. There's a slight hitch though, Todd added. What's that? I asked. Well, Abby tried to notify the next of kin, but all that he had listed was some guy down south. She told him the news, and he told her that he would be coming up in a couple days, and that he is going to buy the school when he gets there. Todd said, that's odd. I added, he has quite the list of priorities, I guess. What would he want with a condemned school anyways? I was wondering the same thing, Todd said, but regardless, that means we would have to investigate it soon, before the buyer gets into town. Todd was right. We could investigate the school now that Charlie is dead. It probably isn't very considerate, but it's a possibility nonetheless. And we wouldn't get another possibility like this again. Okay, I'll tell Dan. I said finally, we will investigate the school tonight. 4. It was well after dark as we approached the school. It's even more ominous when we are this close, especially when it is bathed in the night. The building looks weathered yet surprisingly current, and besides the paint flaking and fading away, it looks just as I remember it from when I was a student. We crossed the empty parking lot, and as we got to the front doors, Todd spoke first. So do we just walk at the front door, or did anyone make a plan for how we get inside? I looked over to Dan, and he gave me a small shrug as a response. I responded, I guess I didn't consider that part. I put too much thought into whether or not we should, and didn't think about if we even could. Dan let out a light chuckle saying, I was more worried about if it's more or less illegal to break into a man's house after he is dead. Is it still breaking and entering if he is dead, or is this just trespassing? I'm no lawyer, and I'm barely a ghost hunter, but from a legal standpoint, I'm going to say maybe I joked. Well, he did say he would be okay with it if it weren't for his insurance. Todd replied, who will we sue now if we got hurt? Okay, that's a reasonable point, I suppose. I said try to make myself feel better about this potential crime, but we better figure out a way inside here soon. I don't want any cops to see us. Anyone have any ideas? Todd bent over and grabbed a large rock. No. Put that down, dude, Dan said in a hushed shout. That would definitely be breaking and entering. Well, do you have a better idea? Todd asked. As Todd and Dan squabbled about the most acceptable way to break into the school, I approached the front doors. I put my hands on the doors and gave a little push, and to our surprise, they actually opened. You left them unlocked? Asked Dan. I guess, I responded. It is a small town after all. Maybe he didn't plan to be out for long. Todd and Dan entered the building behind me. The doors closed behind us, and we could hear the sound echo throughout the vast building. We turned on our shoulder lights. The school still has power running to it, but we don't want any neighbors to see the lights on. The school has an odd aesthetic to it, since it is now redesigned to be a home. We stood in the entryway, which is a large open hallway, now designed as a very open living room. There were a few display cases along the nearest wall that now holds Charlie's shoes and coats. The room has a few couches and an older TV. Neither of them seem to be used in a while. You guys ready? I asked as I pulled out the camera. Yes, but please don't do your regular intro for our video, Todd pleaded. Why not? I've done it for every video. I asked. Dude, it's annoyingly stereotypical. If this video does blow up our channel like you say it will, we can't have that type of introduction for new viewers, Todd stated. Okay, well, do you want to do the introduction then? I asked him. Well, no, that'd be even worse, he said. Okay then, I'll do the introduction my way then. I stated. I turned the camera around to face me and hit record. Good evening, ghost viewers. We are back again with another investigative video. Tonight, we are investigating my local school. This building is a bit of local legend. There are so many terrifying stories about this place. So we just had to investigate it. So get ready to start believing in the paranormal. But before you do, don't forget to like and subscribe. I hit pause on the camera. It was followed by a deafening silence in the room. I could see Todd and Dan holding back laughter. I agree with Todd. That shit sound pathetic dude. Dan laughed finally. Yeah, I know, I said. It always does. That one hurt. Todd chuckled while shaking his head. Can we go explore now with that out of the way? Yes, please, I said dejectedly. To the right of the now living room is a gymnasium, and to the left is the swimming pool. We elected to explore the gymnasium first. The gymnasium didn't appear to be altered at all. It also didn't appear to have been used lately. The bleachers are dusty, and the floor looks as if it hadn't been swept in at least a year. I pulled out my camera to record some footage while we performed our tests. Our investigation usually starts with an Ouija board. Most ghost hunters claim this is complete BS, and honestly we agree, but it does provide some good content. We didn't get much if any movement from the board this time, besides for Todd trying to spell out PNIS a couple times. The next test we'd like to try is the spirit box. Todd absolutely hates this device, and I can see why. But Dan is convinced it is legit. We let the spirit box run for a while. Dan said he heard some related words. But I think he was really stretching his imagination, because all I heard was incoherent nonsense. I usually check an EMF reader while we investigate, but it was very unreliable tonight due to the building actually having power for once. And speaking of power, the air conditioner scared the hell out of us a couple times during the testing. We're used to it being dead silent, and we fine-tune our ears to pick up any noises. So when the AC roared to life, we all jumped. Once we agreed we weren't getting any evidence in this area, we walked across the hall to the swimming pool. The room is humid and smells like chlorine despite the 12-foot pool being drained. The hot tub had a couple renovations from the last time I had seen it. There is now a TV mounted nearby and a new mini fridge sitting adjacent. We ran a few tests in this room as well, with no proof yet again. We wandered over to the locker rooms, which are just outside of the swimming area. We entered the men's room, and it appeared to be well used. I assumed this was Charlie's main bathing area based off of the fresh towels sitting in the lockers and dirty laundry sitting in a hamper in the corner. The sink has a couple of new drawers built onto it, with his toiletries sitting on top. We didn't stay in here for long or record any video, as it felt invasive even though he was gone. I stepped back into the hall and took an awkward glance into the women's locker room. Hey, bud, what you looking at? Dan asked. Is this how I find out you're a pervert? I'm just curious. Haven't you wondered what a women's locker room is like? I asked. Sure, but it's probably the same as the men's, just without the urinals, and maybe different paint, Todd stated. Okay, well, don't you guys want to find out? Now is our chance, I said. Sure, I suppose, why not? Let's go peep in the girls' bathroom, Todd said while walking in. When we entered the locker room, we were surprised and speechless from what we saw. The women's room also appears to be well used, but by girls, which was concerning because Charlie didn't have a wife nor kids. The lockers contained towels and girls' clothing, ranging from children's size to adult. The doors on the stalls were removed. Todd broke the silence by saying, What the fuck? Are you guys disturbed by this as well? This is definitely concerning. This doesn't make any sense. I replied, why would Charlie have girls' clothes here, and why so much? It's Justin that lives here. Todd asked. Before I had a chance to reply, Dan shushed us, his eyes wide with fear, and stammered, I think I just heard someone knocking. As in, knocking how? Todd asked, still focused on the locker room. Like when you knock on somebody's front door, politely waiting to be let inside. Dan said, could have been old pipes maybe? Todd asked, still looking around the locker room. No, it definitely sounded like a hand knocking on a door. As in knock knock, who's there? Dan said, I'm telling you guys, Dash. Knock, knock, knock. He was interrupted by the knocking. It must have been louder this time as Todd and I both heard it clearly. Dan was right, it definitely sounded like someone knocking on a door. Even Todd looked like he agreed. I turned my camera on and we stepped back into the hall. I asked, is it coming from the front door? Did someone find out we are here? Maybe, Dan said. It's so hard to tell. The building echoes so much. I started cautiously walking to the front door when we heard again. Knock, knock, knock. That sounded like it came from down the hall, Todd stated. That leads deeper into the school. That's the hall that brings you to either the west or east wings, I said. Well, I don't like that, Dan said as the three of us began walking down the hall. The hall felt as if it was a mile long, and it felt like I was running one based on how hard my heart was beating. I'm excited that this will be the first bit of actual evidence we have ever gotten, but I am also terrified. We finally got to the end of the hall. There are two sets of double doors on either side of the hall. The right set of doors are open. They lead into the east wing, which is a high school, assumably where Charlie used to live. The left doors are chained shut. They lead into the west wing, which is the elementary school. That is a condemned wing. So that's probably why they are chained shut. Which way do you think it came from? Todd asked. We got our answer as we heard another knock. Knock. Knock to the left, and I saw the west wing doors shake and bind against the chains. I slowly approached the doors and asked, hello, who is it? With false confidence. In response, we heard a quick pattering fleeing from the door, like little footsteps running away in a game of tag. We sat in silence for a moment, my confidence quickly fading. Dan pushed on the doors and said, we have to get into the west wing. There is clearly something back there. Do you think Charlie left a key somewhere while he pulled on the lock? Maybe, I replied. But actually the east and west wings share a lunchroom. So the two sides meet up again at the cafeteria. Maybe those doors are less secure and easier to break into. Well, let's take a trip through the east wing then, Todd said, before that critter gets away. We all shared a look of agreement and headed through the high school doors. 5. The high school appears to be more taken care of. The carpet looks recently vacuumed and the walls have been repainted. We walked to the vacant halls, passing by empty classrooms. I recorded some more with the camera, while Dan and Todd were bickering yet again. Dan said, there is no way you actually think that was an animal back there. It had to be. Todd responded, what else could it be? A ghost? A ghoul? Some sort of monster maybe. We are ghost hunting. So yes, I do think it could be a ghost. That is the whole reason we are out here. That's what we are trying to find, Dan stated. Todd stayed quiet, probably because Dan has a pretty good point. What kind of animal do you think it was then? Dan asked half-jokingly. I don't know. That's why we're going over there. It has to be something pretty big, though. Todd said unconvincingly. Oh, come on, dude. Seriously? Do you hear yourself right now? Dan asked. We passed by the auto shop. It lay empty, which seems odd to me. The shop hasn't changed much, besides the addition of Charlie's tools. The room is fairly dusty, but it's hard to tell if that's out of the ordinary for auto shops. The attached classroom is renovated into an office space. A newer computer sits atop his desk, with a few file cabinets sitting along the nearby wall. We searched the office for his keys, but we found nothing, so we kept heading for the cafeteria. I led us through the next corridor and through a shortcut through the library. It has been remodeled into an oversized living room area. A couple couches and a reclining chair sat around a large TV with a nice sound system. A couple of the bookshelves now hold an extensive collection of movies and CDs. We plan to come back to this room and investigate it further after we checked out the West Wing. We took a quick detour to explore the principal's office, which is now Charlie's bedroom. The layout reminds me of a small apartment. There's a waiting room when you first walk in, which connects to Charlie's bedroom and main bathroom. It is well decorated. The waiting area has a couple plants sitting in the corners of the room, and the walls are arranged with posters of old metal bands I don't recognize. His bedroom is also well kept. The bed is made, and his nightstand seems organized. We searched this area as well, but did not have any more luck finding the keys. I was beginning to worry that he may have had the keys on him the night he died, but I tried to push that thought away as we continued our expedition to the cafeteria. We finally arrived at the cafeteria. It is a spacious room lined with rows of long tables. I looked closer at the tables and saw something that troubled me. There are about a dozen lunch trays loaded with food sitting on a couple of the tables. The food looks to be only a day or two old. I point out to the guys, and Todd seems equally troubled by it. We were confused about why Charlie would need so many trays for himself. But Dan walked by us, clearly more interested in the doors that connect to the West Wing, expressing a bravery we haven't seen from him before. He stepped up to the doors and gave them a push. They are locked. So he took a couple steps back, and before either Todd or I could protest, he kicks the doors open. We called up to Dan, and I said, "You know, a heads up would have been nice." Dan replied, "Well, we couldn't find the keys, and I don't know of any other ways in. So how else were we going to get into the elementary school?" Todd said, "I don't know, dude. You didn't really give us any time to weigh our options." "Okay, well, it's too late now. So why are we wasting time debating how to get to the doors when I've already kicked them down?" Dan asked smugly, "Okay, fair enough. You make a good point. Let's go then." Todd said, leading the way into the elementary school. Before following them, I record a quick extra bit of footage of the cafeteria, still troubled by the lunch trays. Eventually, I turned back toward my friends, hurriedly closing the gap into the West Wing. 6. The West Wing is more neglected, but still holds the appearance of an elementary school. Most of the rooms still have the old desks and classroom decor, but are covered in a heavy layer of dust. This side of the school smells musty and stale. All of the windows on this side are boarded up. The walls are painted pastel colors, and the floors have colored lines, which lead to different portions of the school. We saw no obvious signs of what was knocking on the door earlier, so we decided we should walk back to the first set of doors, in hopes that we might find something closer to where the knocking first occurred. As we got deeper into the elementary school, I noticed something. The West Wing is in very nice condition. It looks clearly abandoned, but it didn't appear to be on the verge of collapse like Charlie said it was. I mentioned it to the guys. "Hey, does this wing look very condemned to you too?" They paused to look around. Todd said, "I'm no building inspector, but I would agree. This wing does look pretty nice so far. I wouldn't condemn it." Dan commented, "I thought Charlie said it was the second floor that was dangerous. We haven't made it up there yet." "I guess," I said, "but I assumed there would be damage on the first floor as well, if the second floor was about to collapse." They just shrugged and continued exploring. As we traipsed past the computer lab, Dan stopped us silently, raising a hand. "What's up? Why are you acting all Black Ops right now?" Todd whispered, "Do you hear that?" Dan asked, "Do you hear that humming?" We fell silent, and I heard it. It's a sing-songy type of humming, coming from within the computer lab. We exchanged nervous glances, and I lead the way, slowly prowling into the room. The lab has numerous computers lining every wall and a couple rows down the middle. I can hear the humming clearer now that we are inside, but I can't quite make out the song. We can't see the source of the humming right away, so we split up to get a better look. I slowly approach one of the middle rows. I apprehensively looked under the desks, and I discover what is singing. A young girl is crouched under the desk on the far end. She is wearing a dirty, stained nightgown, and her hair is matted. She is rocking back and forth slowly, and I can now hear her whimpering, "They need help," as she hums. I froze, unsure how to proceed. She must have felt my eyes on her, because she quit humming and sits still. Slowly, she turns her head to look at me. She looks me dead in the eyes, unblinking, and lets out an ear-piercing, raspy shriek. I jump back terrified, and she leaps at me. I narrowly avoid her, but I somehow manage to drop the camera as she runs by me and towards the door. She ran into the hall screaming, "You shouldn't be here!" and "Get out!" I look back at the guys. They both sit petrified. "Guys!" Snap out of it. "We gotta follow her," I yell while picking up my camera off the floor. Thankfully, it still works. Dan rushed to my side, and we ran into the hall in the direction the girl fled. We rounded the corner into the corridor and see the girl standing completely still with her hand pointing towards the stairs. I stop and pull out my camera, recording clear footage of the girl. She whispers, "They are up there. Please help us." Dan said, "Fuck this dude. I'm out. We got our footage. That's enough for me." and turns around racing towards the nearest exit. Dan, wait! I yell, pleading. I turn back towards the girl, but she's gone. Nervously, I look around for her. I see fresh footprints in the dust that lead upstairs, but I'm not about to go up there alone. Yeah, fuck this. I agree and run back the same way as Dan. I found Dan and Todd back in computer lab. Todd shook out his horror, but he was still spooked. I approached him saying, "It's time to go, buddy. I got our footage. Let's leave." Dan nodded in anxious agreement, leading us out the door. We quickly retrace our steps back to the cafeteria. I am a bit concerned about Todd. I've never seen him this quiet before, but Dan is able to escort him out ahead of me. We made it back to the cafeteria without event. I turned back momentarily to close the doors behind us. Then we paused briefly to catch our breath. What the hell was that? Dan asked, still rattled. "I think that was our first ghost," I said excitedly. "Once we get out of here, I can't wait to say I told you so," Dan said, playfully pushing Todd. Todd laughed anxiously. "Yeah, I guess you guys are right. I think that was actually a ghost. Did you get on camera?" "Oh, yeah, I did. This video is going to blow us up. The footage I got is perfect. I dare to say the best evidence on the entire internet." I responded. "You guys ready to go home so we can get that footage posted then?" Dan asked. "Yes, I am very ready to get the hell out of here," Todd said. We headed back the way we came, following our footsteps to the high school, through the once home of old Charlie. I still have a lot of questions after this expedition, but for now I'm focusing on getting home. We made it through the high school easily and got back to the hallway that divides the west and east wings. I let out a sigh of relief as I saw the entryway doors at the end of the hall. I took a moment near the west doors to look at the chains, when the door slowly creaked open and rattled as it bound against the chains. A face now peering at us through the gap. As soon as I locked eyes with her, the doors began to violently shake, and I heard a girl's voice yelling and crying, "Let us out, please. Please, you have to set us free. Help us." She started pounding heavily on the door and continued pleading, but we already began running in the opposite direction. We barged through the entryway doors, and I was half tempted to kiss the ground as I stepped foot on the parking lot. I looked around at my friends, their faces mixed with emotions, partially excited but also terrified. We recorded a quick outro outside of the school. I'm unsure if it will be usable since we are so clearly shaken up. Dan gave a couple middle fingers to the old school, but Todd and I didn't look back. Finally, I put the camera away and we got into my car, relieved to be heading home, and ready to post a video of what we found. 7. It didn't take long for the video to blow up like we suspected. I spent the entire next day editing the video so I could post it as soon as possible. I was able to post it on Sunday night, just a day after our investigation. By Thursday, the video was on the trending tab with 1 million views. Our channel blew up, gaining 500,000 subscribers already, and didn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. We received a dozen DMs from other creators asking collab or to ask us for the location to school. But one DM stuck out in particular. It was from an individual named Josh. School. But one DM stuck out in particular. It was from an individual named Josh. He was insistent on getting information about the girl we saw. Josh, "Hey guys, my name is Josh Redacted. I just saw your video and I know this may sound odd, but I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions about the girl. It's urgent." His message made me curious, so I agreed. "Sure, what do you want to know about her?" "Josh, did you happen to see her eyes? If so, what color were they?" "I didn't really get a good look at them. It was too dark in there." "Josh, how about her right forearm? Did you see a scar shaped like a dog bite on her arm?" I didn't remember much about her arm, so I looked back at the footage. I start by re-watching when she leapt at me in the computer lab. That's when I noticed something. I didn't drop the camera. She knocked it out of my hands. When she jumped at me, I could clearly see her hand hitting the camera, and it was the same arm Josh asked about. I took a closer look at her arm and saw she did indeed have a dog bite shaped scar. I sent another message to Josh. "Yes, she does have a scar on her arm. How did you know that?" "Josh, I thought that was her. Please, you need to tell me the location of the school. I can meet you somewhere if you don't trust me. I'm not telling you anything more until you tell me how you knew about her scar. Josh, okay, fine. I know about her scar because I think the girl you saw in the school is my missing sister. There's a photo attached to the message. I opened it and saw a missing person poster. The girl on the poster looks exactly like the girl I saw in the school that night. Her name is Lucy, redacted, and she went missing 9 months ago from a nearby county. I replied to Josh immediately with my phone number and gave him the location of the school. He told me he doesn't live too far from here, and we agreed to meet at my apartment tonight and then go to the police with our findings. Hey, I stand outside the school once again with Josh, Todd, and Dan, but this time the school is bathed in flashing red and blue lights as the sun is setting behind it. The school is surrounded by what appears to be every police officer and EMT in town. The officers breached the school just a moment ago, and we were told to wait in the parking lot. Josh made it into town earlier this evening. As soon as he came into my apartment, I knew he was telling the truth. I could see it in his eyes. They looked just like Lucy's. We skipped all formalities as he told me all the details of her disappearance. After I answered all of Josh's questions, we went to the police station. We told the story to the officer at the front desk. Officer Anderson didn't seem to be convinced with our ghost girl in the school story until I showed him the video and Josh pulled out the missing persons poster. Anderson put on his glasses to get a closer look at the girl and saw that we were serious. He showed our proof to some of the nearby officers. They unanimously agreed to start an investigation. Then a couple hours later we arrived here. We weren't technically invited to join the investigation, but no one stopped us either. We sat in the parking lot for what felt like the entire night, but according to my watch it has been only 45 minutes. The sun is fully set by now and the night sky is beginning to take over. Finally the front doors opened. One of the officers exited the building with his arm around Lucy. Josh ran up to her as fast as he could without frightening her. Lucy watched him tensely until she recognized him. Then she smiled and fell into his arms. He said something to her, but I was out of earshot, and I didn't want to intrude. The front doors opened again, and 2 more officers walked out, holding a couple of young girls in their arms. The girls are gauntly thin. They look sickly but are alive nonetheless. The officers rushed them over to the ambulance. Todd pointed me to the front doors again, and I saw 3 more officers rush out with girls in their arms as well. I overheard the 2 officers talking to the EMTs. There are a couple more girls inside yet. Anderson is working on getting them free right now. 1 teen and 1 adult. These girls were chained upstairs in the elementary art room. The other officer pointed to Lucy and said, "That girl gave us quite the scare in there. She was the only girl not chained up. She said she escaped her chains last week and hit a bad man with a brick, but she hasn't seen him since." The 3 other officers approached the ambulances, setting the girls on the available gurneys, and asked how they could help. An officer named Lincoln turned to us and told us he is going to take Lucy back to the station to treat her there and see what else she is willing to tell us tonight. Josh and I agreed to come with. 9. By morning, a lot of my questions became answered. Lucy was very open about her experiences in the school. She was very brave, with encouragement from her big brother Josh. She started by telling us that she tried to hurt Charlie with a brick because he was a bad man, but she couldn't hit him hard enough, and he dragged her back upstairs. That was the night that Charlie got into a car accident. Lincoln is going to look further into the autopsy, but suspects Lucy gave him a concussion, and that caused him to veer off the road as he was driving to the hospital. Eventually, Lucy was able to escape her chains again, but couldn't escape the west wing since the doors were locked and the windows are boarded up. I felt pretty bad for closing the doors behind me as we fled that night. She also told us that Charlie has been kidnapping the girls from nearby towns. Lincoln pointed out that most of the girls rescued from the school are in the missing persons databases of neighboring counties. He showed the database to Lucy, and she was able to point out a few more girls that used to be at the school but were picked up by another bad man. She said he comes from the south to pick up the girls who don't behave. I told Lincoln about the man who was listed as Charlie's next of kin that Todd mentioned last week. Lincoln pulled up the man's information and found his photo. He showed the photo to Lucy. She cried but confirmed it was him. His name is Arnold, redacted, and he even looked like a creep. He should have made it into town by now, according to my conversation with Todd. Lincoln had his doubts that he would show it all, but said they would keep trying to reach him until he is caught. Later, when the IT department went through a computer in Charlie's office, and they validated what Lucy said, they found hundreds of messages between Charlie and Arnold that revealed a bigger trafficking ring led by Arnold. At that point, they turned the case over to the FBI for a large-scale operation. That was the last of Officer Lincoln's questioning. Then the on-site nurse gave Lucy a quick evaluation. Lucy said she felt fine, so the nurse told her to get plenty of rest over the next few days and drink plenty of water. Lucy asked about the other girls in school. The nurse said they're all going to be okay and that the officers are reaching out to their parents now. Finally, Lincoln said we are free to leave, but we have to stay in town until the investigation is complete. I extended an offer to Josh and Lucy to stay at my place for a few days, which they accepted. We left the department grateful for all they have done, but hopeful we wouldn't have to return anytime soon. We arrived at my apartment before noon. Before I could even offer my bedroom to Lucy, she was asleep on the couch. Josh fell asleep on the recliner adjacent to her, unwilling to leave her side. I left 2 glasses of water on the coffee table with a note telling them to help themselves to anything in the kitchen. I walked into my bedroom and turned on my computer. Officer Lincoln told me to delete the video of the school for the remainder of the investigation. I wasn't sure how long that would be, so I began writing my experiences here while the memories and emotions are still fresh. Surprisingly, my YouTube channel no longer feels as important. I have new friends to care for now, along with my old ones. Maybe a break from ghost hunting will do me good, because I certainly found more than I was hoping to. Story 3. I received my brother's wedding announcement in the mail. I've never seen his wife before, and apparently neither has he. I almost missed it altogether, buried as it was under all the junk mail and pre-approved credit card offers. The announcement was printed on a 7-inch by 5-inch piece of white cardstock. The right side featured a photo of a couple, while the left bore a simple message in a plain font. Just married. David and Emma. June 6th, Acadia. I read that strangely unceremonious message twice as I stood in front of my mailbox, trying to recall how I knew the couple. The only David I knew was my brother, who was not only single, but perhaps the most single man I've ever known. I looked over the photo of the happy couple, and I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that my jaw dropped. The man in the picture was in fact my younger brother. He was strolling down the beach, hand in hand with a young woman, both of them caught mid-laugh. He gazed adoringly at the woman, at Emma, I guess, who was covering the top half of her face with her free hand. I thought it was strange that she'd be obscuring her own eyes in a wedding announcement photo, but the card itself was so strange that I didn't dwell on her pose. The announcement was either a prank, which would have been remarkably out of character for my humorless sibling, or David had subverted my every expectation and eloped. Once I got past the initial shock of the card, I went back inside, tossed the junk mail, and gave David a call. It was evening where he was, but not so late that he would have been asleep. He picked up after 6 rings. Well, mazel fucking tov. I told him, squinting down at the woman's face. Huh, who's the lucky gal? He paused, clearly trying to puzzle out my question. Then, what the hell are you talking about, man? Okay, so it was a prank. If he had secretly gotten married and wanted to hide it from his family, then he wouldn't have mailed me an announcement. From confusion in his voice, I figured he wasn't in on the joke. It sounded like one of his friends pulled one over on him. I explained the situation, then sent him a photo of the card. Instead of laughing it off like I expected, David got so quiet I thought the call had dropped. He eventually said he had no idea who Emma was, nor who had sent me the card. Sure, some of his friends were pranksters, but how would any of them have gotten my address without David's knowledge? He said he'd asked his friends about it, and requested that I see who else had received the wedding announcements. Up until that point, I'd still thought of the card as a harmless joke. but the severity of David's reaction put me on edge. Maybe there actually was some woman in his life that, for whatever reason, he didn't want people knowing about. After the call, I texted my parents and a few of our family friends. One of my old neighbors had indeed received a card, and seemed a little disappointed when I revealed it was only a prank. My parents checked their mailbox upon my request, and only then did they find the announcement. Thank God I called before they could discover it on their own. I genuinely think my mom would have had a heart attack. So far, those are the only 2 households that have received the cards, and I found it bizarre that David's friends knew either of those addresses. Before I fell asleep, I texted David my update. He said that he hadn't yet found the culprit and planned to continue his search in the morning. Again, I was somewhat perturbed by his seriousness. Was I missing something? I spent the next few hours trying to figure out who his bride could have been. In doing so, I quickly started to feel like every other woman on earth was named Emma. There were so many significant women in mine and David's lives who bore that name that sorting through them all seemed pointless. There was, for example, our childhood friend and neighbor, who David harbored an unrequited crush on for years until her family moved away. There had been a tragic incident at our high school in which an Emma in David's year fell headfirst behind some lockers, dying from positional asphyxia. I had dragged David along to a rager at an Emma's house in college, which had ended in both of us spending a night in jail for public intoxication. Apparently, my life was just one big stream of Emmas, and none of them seemed plausibly linked to the marriage announcements. Now, here's the part of all this that I'm still struggling to make sense of. The night after I called David about the card, I woke up in the middle of the night to my phone ringing. I checked the caller ID and saw that it was David. I assumed he was calling me about the stupid prank, and part of me wanted to ignore him until the morning. Then again, he could have been having some kind of emergency, so I picked up the phone and grumbled what? Into the mic. There was silence for a few seconds, and then I was shocked to hear a woman's voice on the other end. "Hello," said the voice, quiet and slow and unmistakably feminine. I sat up in bed. "What? David? Who is this?" I double-checked the screen and confirmed it was in fact David's number. Another long pause, and then, "Yes, this is David's apartment." After that, the caller hung up. Disturbed, I called David back immediately, but no one picked up. I sent him a text asking who had just called, then called him 3 more times. No one picked up, and I was starting to panic. Yeah, I know the most likely explanation was that he simply had a woman over, but something didn't feel right. I guess David's paranoia was rubbing off on me because I was so weirded out that I actually phoned David's buddy Mike, who lived in the same apartment building, and made him do a wellness check for me. When Mike got to the apartment, my brother was asleep inside, perfectly safe and sound. He didn't have anyone over, and there were no signs that anyone had broken into his apartment or messed with his phone. And yet, I hadn't imagined the call, at least not entirely. According to the phone logs, there had definitely been an outbound call from David's phone to mine. He had no memory of calling. And even if David had a history of sleep talking, which he doesn't, the voice certainly didn't sound like a man impersonating a woman. I'm at a complete loss. I tried giving the card a more thorough look this morning, trying to see if I glossed over some clue. The longer I stared at the woman in the photo, the more creeped out I got. Why would she cover her eyes? If someone had gone to the trouble of creating fake couple photos, why not give Emma a more natural pose? Frankly, I could only look at the marriage announcement for a few seconds at a time before I had to put it down. Maybe that's why it took me so long to realize that the woman's mouth had been flipped upside down. Story 4. I'm never going camping again. 3 years ago, my friend group decided to go on a camping trip. Not just in an RV park and chilling kind of camping, but a proper tent and campfire trip. See, I'm a chronic glamper. If given the choice between roughing it out in the wild and chilling in an air-conditioned RV, I'm picking the RV every time. I enjoy my creature comforts, and I always have. Jake, one of the guys that runs in our little group, prides himself on being a true outdoorsman, as our group usually ends up taking trips to nearby lakes and national parks. It's become a bit of a strain between the two of us. It'd be one thing if he could respect that I'm not here to have the authentic experience and just want to have fun, but he can't. He needles and mutters about how they could go to cooler places. If only we didn't have to always glam to get out of the damn house. I think that's why I accepted his trip proposal. Normally I'd shut it down without question, but he'd been getting on my nerves for years. I accepted, thinking I'd prove once and for all that I could do it the rough and tough way. Maybe then he'd leave me the hell alone. Jake planned out a trip for us and our other two friends to a nearby lake on his family's property. When we arrived, I tried to ask where exactly he knew we were going, but he'd just smirk. Relax, Maddie. The trail's marked. Even you won't get lost. Behind me, Chris and Luke, the other two coming with us, started up a conversation about S-morays and the supposed lake at the place we're going to. I felt my shoulders relax. Jake pulled out a compass and let us due north. According to him, we had to follow the compass a little ways until we found some trees he and his family had marked with red triangles. From there, you follow the path. The sun was going down by the time we spotted the first red triangle. I checked my phone, which said it was about 7:30. I also checked my signal. Nothing. The pack straps were digging into my shoulders, and Luke was huffing as he trudged behind Chris and me. Funny, despite the fact that Luke was obviously the least capable of us, it still me that Jake liked to piss on. Jake, I called. He paused and turned to me, a familiar irritated expression on his face. Can we pause for a minute? I gotta take a piss. I didn't mention that Luke looked ready to puke, but he seemed to see it anyway when he looked at him. Jake huffed. Don't get lost. I want to get to our site, so we can get set up. I dropped my pack to the ground and started walking off the trail some. I could hear Luke wheezing behind me, obviously tired from the trek. The woods were quiet as I broke from the trail. I listened around for the birds or crickets, but it was dead silent. I glanced over my shoulder, making sure I was far enough away, and relieved myself. I zipped up and began to turn back when a branch cracked behind me. My head snapped back in the direction of the noise, but there was nothing. I turned and began walking back, and the crunching of leaves started behind me. I stopped, and so did the noise. It was my own footsteps. It had to be, but I started again, faster this time, and nearly broke into a run when the crunching just seemed to get louder and louder. I busted through the tree line, hitting the trail and whirling around to see what had been on my heels. Nothing. I stared out at the forest, waiting. There wasn't even a rustle of leaves in the wind, just silence. Matt, let's go, Chris called, breaking my staring contest with the empty trees. I turned and jogged up the trail to catch up with them. As I picked my pack up off the ground, I couldn't stop myself from asking, "Did you guys hear that?" They all turned to look at me. Hear what? Luke answered. I couldn't quite bring myself to spit it out. After all, what I heard. Leaves crunching when I walked? I shook my head. Jake continued to lead us towards the campsite, the red triangles leading us ever onwards. I looked at them closer as we passed. They were spray painted on, with each tree being marked on both sides, so that they could be seen no matter the direction you were coming from. Each marker was about 5 meters apart, and at any given time you could see the next few up ahead. The sun was nearly set when we broke through to the spot by the lake. I had to hand it to the bastard. The sight was beautiful. The trees all stood in glorious formation, shades of green mottled with the golden light of sunset. The water shined a slightly muddy blue-gray, peppered with that same golden light stretching through the trees. We each picked a spot to pitch our tents. Luke and I got put on tent duty while Chris and Jake, our two more experienced outdoorsmen, went out to find some good sticks for firewood. As I finished getting my tent up, I glanced over at Luke. He was struggling to get the stakes in the ground. I signed, turning to help. We got his tent pitched and worked together to get the other two up. As we were finishing up with Chris's tent, the other two came back. I could see Jake looking over his tent, probably ready to find something to criticize me on. I was proud when he couldn't find anything. Chris and Jake threw some of the wood into the spot we designated as our fire pit. putting the rest of it close by for later use. They got the fire started, and we all idly chatted as the sun sank beneath the hills. Luke got up and brought his backpack over. As he unzipped the pack and reached in, I smiled. Hershey's chocolate bars, a box of graham crackers, giant fluffy marshmallows. I glanced over and saw my grin mirrored on Chris's face. Jake rolled his eyes, but obligingly got to grab some sticks to roast the marshmallows on. We gorged ourselves on granola bars and esmores as the world around us turned dark. "Hey, Matt," Chris started. I looked at him, mouth and hands sticky with melted sugar. "Earlier today, when you ran off to take a piss, what was that all about?" I looked at him puzzled. "You ran out of there like a bat out of hell. Then you were all, 'Did you guys hear that?'" He pitched his voice up, and my twitched. He grinned goofily at me. I didn't quite know what to say. I didn't want to scare Luke, who was looking a bit nervous, and I still wasn't convinced I hadn't made the whole thing up. I thought I heard something behind me. I settled on, "Branch snapped kind of loud and it freaked me out." Jake snorted. "Really? All that fuss over a branch cracking? In the woods?" Yeah, I know. That's why I dropped it. It wasn't much." Chris and Luke exchanged a look, seeming to sense that wasn't quite it. But Jake was snickering at my foolishness, and neither quite seemed like they wanted to press. We all went to bed after putting the fire out. I tossed and turned some, but overall the night passed on without incident. In the morning, we all woke up to the sound of Jake hollering that if we wanted to fish, now was the time before it got too hot. The lake was a blast. We sat around fishing for a while, chatting as the sun rose up in the sky. The fish were particularly hesitant to bite, but as Chris launched into a story, I found myself having a good time anyways. We scrambled some eggs we brought along in Jake's fancy cooler over the fire when we got too hungry. I considered asking him if bringing food and was cheating, but it wasn't worth the fight. At about noon, we started swimming. The water was nice and warm from the summer heat, and I spent a good chunk of time just floating and soaking up the sun. That, of course, was ruined when Luke snuck up on me underwater and grabbed me around the gut, flipping me over and giving me a nose full of lake water. We splashed around for a good long while. The thing that drove us back to the shore was our grumbling stomachs. Luke and I were chatting excitedly about finding some good sticks for roasting the hot dogs we brought along when I ran straight into Chris's back. "Whoa, Chris." "Dude, what's dash?" I paused. Chris and Jake were just staring towards our campsite. I followed their gaze. Plastic littered the ground. All the meat we had brought with us had been torn out of its packages and was gone, leaving only the wrappers behind. Luke's tent, which had the marshmallows and chocolate, had its flaps shredded. The flap was still zipped up closed, but the middle was gaping like an open wound. My blood ran cold. Luke had caught up and was looking as nervous as me. Even Jake looked shaken. I mean, we are in bear territory. I tried to reason. Guess we should have locked down the food a bit better. Jake looked pissed. "You think I didn't plan for that? No damn bears getting into these containers. I don't even know why they would. The meat's all packaged. They say bears are pretty smart. Maybe they..." Luke tried. "That cooler had a lock on it no bear could undo. It'd have to bust the damn thing open." Silence weighed heavily on us as we looked at the cooler. The nice, shiny, pristine cooler. "Maybe we should head back. I mean, we don't have any food left," Luke suggested nervously. I looked up at the sky. The sun was still relatively high, but it was rapidly sinking down. It'd be dark by the time we made it back to our cars. Then I looked over at Luke's tent. I stared at the shredded door, the carefully opened backpack. What was worse? Risking getting lost in the woods, or risking staying? That wasn't a real choice, and I knew it. "Let's get our stuff packed up, and let's go. We have our heavy-duty flashlights," I said. Chris and Luke didn't need any convincing. They hustled to get their tents taken down and their stuff ready. Jake looked hesitant. "I don't think leaving now is a good idea. He checked his watch. Already 5:30 by the time we get back." "It'll be dark, I know," I agreed. "But it's either that or staying here for another night." He huffed and started getting his stuff together. My tent came down easy enough, and I had all my stuff packed quick. When I shrugged on my pack and turned to the other guys, I could see Jake stomping out the fire embers and grabbing his compass. "Everyone got their lights?" he said, bad mood evident. Chris and Luke nodded, although Luke looked vaguely ill at the thought of navigating by flashlight. I wasn't faring much better. We all started back the way we came in. Jake took the lead, following the trail markers. Luke followed close behind him. Chris and I took up the rear, keeping pace beside one another. "You think it was a bear?" he asked. I shrugged. "Dunno. Never actually had an encounter with one." "I have," he said. "Dad and I went camping when I was a kid. Family next to us on the grounds didn't properly store up their trash." "You saw it?" "Sure did. Black bear. Ugly thing. Spawned a whole lecture from my dad about how to properly store food and trash so you don't attract them." He paused. "Not gonna lie to you, Matt. I don't think this was a bear." I waited for him to elaborate, but he just looked at the cooler Jake was carrying. "We followed all the safety precautions?" "Not just that. We were pretty damn close to the shore, splashing and running around. Just lots of noise. Bears don't like noise." "Jake, what way do we go?" Luke called, interrupting our silent musing. I looked up from my feet, confused. The spray-painted red triangle was visible on the tree ahead of us. Jake paused. "What way do we?" He glanced around. I took the opportunity to do the same. Luke was practically bouncing from foot to foot in his eagerness to go. "Where's the other path go off to?" "Another part of the lake?" he asked, giving a nervous laugh. Jake wasn't laughing, though. In fact, he was turning an alarming shade of white. I could feel his sudden fear radiating off of him. I was starting to match it. Beyond the tree with our marker, I could distinctly see two paths marked in the same fashion. One veered off slightly to the left, and the other veered off slightly to the right. The marker was dead center. We'd have to choose a path. "Jake, which one goes to our cars?" I asked. It was a testament to how stunned he was that he didn't tear me a new one over for questioning him. There'd only been one path coming up, and it was straight as an arrow. We hadn't even taken a little sidestep. Had just marched straight through the woods. Neither of these paths went straight forward like we had when we came up. So what was this? A whole new split complete with a line of markers for a path that wouldn't take us back to our cars? "Jake, you and your family put these markers up, right? Which way do we go?" I asked, urgency creeping into my voice. I don't know," he said, his voice cracking. "We never really went out from the path. We definitely didn't mark a new path. And we wouldn't mark with the same damn markers." I looked up again. The sun had crept further down, painting the sky with a faint shade of orange. We were getting closer and closer to sunset. "Jake, are you sure we're going the right way?" Chris asked. I turned to see him, and Luke huddled together behind us. "Yes, we go right. Ignore the damn markers on the left. We go right." "How do we know, though?" "I mean, those aren't the same markers we followed, right? There was only one path coming up," Chris nervously asked. Jake let out a frustrated huff. He slung his pack to the ground and walked over to a tree with some low-hanging branches. "I'll climb up here and find the clearing we parked near. That way, we can ignore the damn markers and go to the road." "Happy?" he snarled before grabbing the branch and beginning to climb. We watched him climb till about halfway up when the leaves began to obscure him. I could hear the branches rustling as he continued his climb. "Well," Chris hollered, "I see the road." Jake yelled back. We all let out a sigh of relief. "This whole trip has been a bit of a nightmare," I commented. Chris and Luke both nodded. I waited to hear the crackling of the branches as Jake climbed down. They never came. We waited there at the bottom for what felt like an eternity. "Jake? Buddy? You coming down from there?" Chris called. No answer. I frowned, tried to see through the thick canopy. Suddenly, I heard the sound of something hurtling through the branches. The crashing was fast, a free fall as whatever was collided with everything in its path. I jumped back in time to avoid being knocked over the head with whatever it was that had fallen. I looked down. A hiking boot lay sideways on the ground, its ties unlaced. I looked back up into the canopy. The wind blew a little harder, shuffling the leaves just enough for me to see higher up the tree. Jake was gone. I blinked once, twice, before turning back to the others. Chris and Luke both were staring at the shoe. Luke had Chris's arm in a vice grip, his breathing beginning to speed up in a telltale sign of panic. Chris looked back up. "Jake, where the hell are you?" "This ain't funny." Still silent. We waited 5 minutes, then 10. The only noise around us was a wind rustling through the leaves and the sound of Luke getting more and more antsy. When 15 had passed, I turned to Chris. "Left or right?" He looked at me, startled. "What path?" "Left or right?" "Dude, what are you talking about?" "We can't leave Jake." "Jake's gone." I don't know how or why he seems to think it's funny to leave us here, scaring us half to death. I took a deep breath. We gotta get back to our cars. Leave is packed there. When he wants to stop scaring the shit out of us, he can catch up. Chris paused for a long, tense moment before sighing. "Yeah, okay." He looked over at the two paths in front of us. "Look down the left and see if it looks familiar." I'll look down the right. I nodded and walked towards the left path. Chris and Luke began toward the right, looking down it to try and find some indication that was the right path. I walked to the first marker on the left. I couldn't understand why there were suddenly two paths. It didn't make any damn. I stilled. In front of me, a line of wet red had dripped down from the triangle. I watched it gleam, wet in the setting sun. This marker was new, and now that I was closer to it, I could smell the tang of copper. My heart seized in my chest, and I quickly cut across the paths to Chris and Luke, who were discussing their trail. They turned to me as I approached. "I think this might be it. Both sides of the tree are marked the same way it was when we." "It's this one." "The other." I sucked in a ragged breath. "The other one's fresh." "Fresh? The hell you mean?" Chris started. I cut him off. "The dash, it wasn't paint. The red is wet. It's fresh. Someone painted a new path with the same marker? That's so messed up. Why the hell would?" "Chris, it's not paint." Luke, who had been watching the exchange, cut in. "What do you mean it's not paint? What else would it?" I could see the moment it clicked for him. Chris too tensed in realization. "Is this some kind of joke? You and Jake?" he asked, voice dangerously low. I whirled on him, almost hissing in rage. "You think I planned something like this? With him of all people?" The bastard can't even look at me without a comment on how shit I am at everything. The only reason he even lowered himself enough to pass me an invite is because he knew the two of you would want me to come along. And you think of what? Plan some scary haunted trail. Even as I said it, I knew he didn't. Neither of them did. They both just wanted some rational explanation for all of this. I pushed past Chris to check the trail marker. I got close and checked it. My heart about stopped. It was wet. I turned back towards the clearing we were in before, charging across toward the markers we had been following. Wet, 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 all tinged with the coppery smell we'd been marching by too quickly to notice. I turned back towards Chris and Luke, and saw Chris was right behind me. "They're all wet?" he asked, wrinkling his nose as the smell hit him. We shared a glance, looking at the triangle nearest to us. Now what? I couldn't help but wonder. Here we were, in a rapidly darkening forest, lost without anyone who was even slightly familiar with the area. "I've got a compass in my pack," Chris answered. He set his pack on the ground and rummaged through it for a while before triumphantly pulling out the instrument. "Jake had his on him when he went up that tree, but I have my own." He pointed in a direction off to our right. "South is that way. We go that direction. We should get close to the road. As long as you and me and Luke stay close together, we'll be fine." I nodded and turned towards where Luke was. "You hear that? We'll be fine. We just stick together." And Luke was gone. Nausea slammed into me, turning my limbs into goo. Chris wildly looked around, calling for Luke. I grabbed onto his sleeve, terrified. "Chris," I said, keeping my voice low. He stopped his frantic yelling and looked at me. "Chris, we need to get to the road and get back to our cars." "Matt, we can't just leave Luke here. Jake knows this place, but Luke dash..." "Chris, we get to the car and we go somewhere with signal and call the cops. They can come out here with dogs and search and rescue teams. But for right now, we have to go." I could see him internally fighting a battle, but in the end he nodded. I kept a hold of his sleeve as he led us south. The woods finally got dark enough that I grabbed the flashlight with my free hand. Chris went to grab his too, but I stopped him. "I've got the light. You keep leading us straight." He didn't fight me. He just nodded and continued leading us. Finally, I could see something between the trees. The road. I could hear Chris give a little sigh of relief, and we both started walking a little faster. "Where's the other path go off to?" "Another part of the lake." A voice called behind us. We stopped. Dread crawled up my spine as Luke's voice washed over me. Chris was about to turn and call when I let go of his arm and covered his mouth. He looked at me, angry, when the voice came again. "Jake, what way do we go?" I felt a whimper crawl up my throat. I met Chris's eyes and jerked my head in the direction of the road. He nodded. We crept forward, taking care to keep our steps as light as possible. Behind us, sounding like he was wandering the forest, Luke's voice continued. The nausea increased tenfold as I realized it was just repetitions of things he had said earlier. The road ahead of us was clearer than ever, and as if heaven itself was lighting the way, it was lit in a soft golden glow. Chris broke free of my grasp and ran forward. The crunching of leaves and sticks beneath him caused the voice to stop, and suddenly the sound of something barreling through the trees made its way to my ears. I sprinted after Chris, unwilling to turn and see what was behind us. We broke from the tree line, scared to death. The noise behind us didn't slow down. "Run across the road. Run." I called, not even slightly slowing. I vaguely noticed that the light seemed to be getting brighter, but I ignored it in favor of sprinting harder. Chris cleared the road, and I was right behind him. I heard an odd noise, almost like brakes squealing. I spun around in time to see something big behind us get thrown forward across the road as a car slammed into it. My jaw dropped as everything seemed to come to a stop. The car was dented on the hood, and its driver stumbled out, confused. I didn't hesitate. Neither did Chris. We ran up her, urging her back into the car. I think she caught sight of what was she hit, because she just faintly told us to get in the back. We clambered in as she put the car in reverse and turned the car around. She started the car back towards town, and I couldn't help but stare out the back window. As the driver took a turn and the thing was going out of view, I saw it twitch and begin to rise up. The driver's name was Eve, and she was trying to head home from a work trip in another city. She'd been passing through by pure happenstance and was grilling us on what the hell that thing was. A deer? An elk? A moose? It's awful far down south from moose, but damn if that sucker wasn't big. I just asked her to drop us off at the police station. She looked back at us, confused, but said that was fine. I closed my eyes. When we got there, we told them the whole story. They obviously had some questions, and I knew they didn't believe us on multiple parts. They told us not to leave town, and that they'll have some more questions for us later. They took us up in the morning to get our cars. When we got to the spot, we'd parked. The cops looked just as baffled as Chris, and I had felt this whole trip. Every window of all 4 cars was shattered. The tires were slashed with great big gashes, and the trunks had been ripped open by force. Luke's car even had a door ripped off its hinges. The offending piece of metal bent out of shape a few yards away. The cops just took us home. They never found Jake or Luke. Chris and I still keep in touch every now and again. I think that trip put a strain on our friendship. Eve and I, meanwhile, got a whole lot closer. So close, in fact, she's right here beside me as I type this. I don't know what's prompted me to recall this. Maybe some form of exposure therapy or a way to get off my chest. I'm not sure. All I know is that I'm never going camping again. Story 5. I got caught in a library in a storm. It started raining torrentially a few minutes after we'd arrived. I grabbed my 5-year-old and raced across the parking lot, getting halfway drenched. We made our way downstairs to the children's library. It was empty except for the librarian sitting behind the desk, reading a book, Sorry, I said, as we dripped water everywhere. No worries. Stay as long as you need. We walked over to a table. Since we were the only ones here, I took off our wet shoes and socks, used my hoodie to towel dry Jack's hair. Unfortunately, I didn't have a change of shirt or anything, but Jack seemed fine. He ran over to the Lego table, smiling. I'd planned to just make a pit stop, but I guess we were going to be stuck here for a while. No way I was going to drive in that mess. I pulled out my phone and began to scroll. Rain pelted down, dripping down the glass of the narrow windows near the ceiling. From what little I could see, the parking lot was a gigantic puddle. A flash of lightning, a peal of thunder, and then the lights flickered. We have a backup generator, but I'm not sure it's on, the librarian said, looking up at the ceiling. Let me go check. She hurried out of the room, and then it was just the two of us. I want to get another Pete the Cat book, Jack announced suddenly. Do you want me to come with you? Remember where they are. Yeah. I smiled as he ran off toward the bookshelves, listened to his little pattering footsteps. Then I heard him gasp, and that made me about fall off my chair. Jack! Mama, he said, running back to me, with a mischievous grin on his face. Mama, there's another person. He pointed back toward the aisles. I froze. I hadn't heard anyone else. Whoever was back there, were they being quiet on purpose? No, not quiet, absolutely silent. Who's back there? I whispered, picturing some creepy older guy flattened against the shelves, watching us. But Jack replied, a little girl. I let out a sigh of relief. Then I followed him back to the aisles. He was right. There was a little girl standing there, in front of the books. I couldn't quite see her face from this angle. It was hidden behind her mass of unkempt brown hair. She held a book open in her hands and appeared to be reading, swaying slightly to and fro. I glanced around the library. As far as I could tell, her mom or dad wasn't down here. They must be upstairs. She looked kind of young to leave all by herself. She was a little bigger than my son, maybe 6. Do you need help? I asked. The girl didn't turn around or respond in any way. Maybe she's deaf. Jack said, that was possible, but it was more likely she was just really absorbed in her book. Come on, I said. Her parents were upstairs for a minute, and I wasn't going to interrupt a reading child. But the minutes crept on, and no one else came into the library, not even a librarian, who was supposed to be checking on the generator. The lights flickered a second time, and then a third. Rain drummed on the windows. Fingers of lightning shot across the sky. Just as I was thinking maybe I should check on the girl again, the lights flickered and went out. Jack immediately started to cry. I closed the 3 feet of space between us and hugged him. It's okay, I said, turning my phone's flashlight on with my free hand. It's okay. What about the girl? I hadn't heard her cry. Oh no, she must be so scared, in the dark down here without her parents. I got up, sweeping my flashlight across the shelves. She was standing right there, peering out at us from behind the bookshelf. As soon as the flashlight swept over her, she darted back behind the shelf. Hey, it's okay. I called out. I'll help you find your parents upstairs. Come on, we'll all go together. Nothing happened. Maybe this was why her parents felt they could leave her alone. She was really good about stranger danger. I know I'm a stranger, but I have a kid too. See? Say hi, Jack. He said hi, somewhat reluctantly. We'll go find your parents upstairs. The 3 of us. Okay, silence. Where the hell was that librarian? If she were here, she could probably phone upstairs or bring the parents down or something. Holding Jack's hand, I ventured into the aisles. The first aisle was empty. The second one was too. The third, she was standing at the end of the aisle, perfectly still, her back turned to us. All I could see was that wild, messy hair. I promise we're good people. I called out, I'll help you find your parents. Lightning flickered through the windows. Will you please just come upstairs with us? Thunder rumbled. Maybe she was deaf or nonverbal. Still, there was a horrible feeling in my gut now that something about this was really, really wrong. No one would leave her down here for so long. The parents would come running as soon as the power went out. Where's the librarian? You know what? This is not my fucking problem. I decided finally. I will go upstairs and I will tell the librarians there is an unattended child downstairs. They can find the parents or call the police or do whatever they have to. I turned around with Jack and started walking towards the door. CHSCFFF. CHSCFFF. A scuffling sound behind me. It sounded like slow, deliberate footsteps, but they were dragging their feet. I whipped around to see that the girl was walking towards us, walking backwards, still facing away from us. She was wearing shoes that were far too big for her. CHSCFFF. CHSCFFF. I grabbed Jack's hand and yanked him towards the library door, running as fast as I possibly could. The door slammed shut in our faces. I grabbed the knob, twisted and pulled. It wouldn't open. Hey! I screamed. Let us out! I slapped my palms against the door, the entire frame rattling. Jack began to cry. I scooped him up and, holding him with one arm, tried the knob again. My phone's flashlight flickered. CHSCFFF. CHSCFFF. I whipped around to see the little girl standing behind us. She was facing the right way now, but her eyes were just darkened pits of nothing. Where are my shoes? She said, in a monotonous voice that almost sounded like a recording. Where are my shoes? CHSCFFF. CHSCFFF. I could hear her getting closer, but I didn't dare look. Where are my shoes? Mama, Jack cried. Where are Remy's shoes? Where are Remy's shoes? Let us out. Where are Remus shows? Where are Remus shows? A hand clawed at my arm. Over there. I screamed suddenly, pointing back towards where we'd left our shoes, wet from the rain. A second of silence, and then the lights flickered back on. The doorknob turned under my fingers. I burst out into the hallway, screaming. I ran up the stairs and didn't stop. There were no parents upstairs. The librarian who'd abandoned us was on the phone, trying to troubleshoot the generator. When I told her about the girl, they came down and looked for her everywhere. They didn't find her or my son's shoes. Instead, there was a pair of tattered old women's flats sitting right next to the library door. Those and the bleeding scratches on my arm were the only evidence she'd even been there at all. The librarians didn't tell me anything, but through hours of internet research, I finally found it. An obituary. A little girl had died in the library about a decade before. The obituary didn't give details about the death, but it did give details about her. She was neurodivergent, nonverbal, loved to read, and absolutely hated being barefoot. This kind of gave me the warm fuzzies for a minute, until I came across the second obituary. 6 years ago, an older woman had died in town. She hadn't died in the library. Not exactly. She died from a horrible infection that had developed after she'd sustained deep cuts on her arms after she visited the library. The library had promised to revisit safety practices and sanitize all surfaces, but I had a horrible feeling that wasn't going to work. I looked down at my own cuts, pulsing with pain. She didn't mean to. She was in survival mode, fight or flight, focused on the fact that she needed shoes. But what was going to happen to me? Story 6. Grief opened a door. Now I can't close it. I want to bury Cooper beneath the big oak tree in the backyard. It was the only place that felt right. We used to sit there at night. Him chewing a stick, me sipping a beer, both of us watching the sun spill orange across the treetops. He was 12, old for a sheepdog mutt. His back legs had gotten weak, and the vet said there wasn't much left to do. I stayed with him on that cold steel table until his eyes stopped seeing me. It shattered me. The house got way too quiet after that. Too still. I kept waiting to hear his tags jingling, his claws tapping across the floor. But there was only silence. My routine fell apart. I stopped shaving, barely ate, started sleeping on the couch just to avoid the empty spot at the foot of my bed. That was 6 days ago. The scratching started on the 7th. It was just past midnight. Windy. I was half drunk, dozing in front of some late-night infomercial. At first, I thought it was a branch. But then it came again. Scratch, scratch, scratch at the back door. A slow, steady rhythm. Purposeful. Familiar. Like how Cooper used a paw at the door when he wanted to come in. I froze. My heart was pounding, so loud it drowned out the TV. I told myself it was just an animal, probably a raccoon or a stray cat. But when I opened the door, the breath caught in my throat, and there he was, Cooper, matted, caked in mud, ribs showing through his fur, his left eye cloudy, the other a glowing yellow I didn't recognize. But it was him, that bent ear, that crooked tail, and he was wagging it. I should have slammed the door, called someone, run, but grief messes with your brain. It twists things, breaks logic. You start hoping, even when hope makes no damn sense. Cooper? I croaked. He let out a soft bark, the kind he used to make when he wanted me to throw the ball. I stepped aside. He trotted in. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat across from him in the living room, watching. He didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't lie down. Just sat there, staring at me, tongue out, smiling. But dogs don't smile like that. Around 3 a.m., I dozed off on the couch. When I opened my eyes, Cooper was right next to me, too close. His face was inches from mine, eyes wide open, mouth stretched back in that grotesque grin. Then, in a voice that wasn't his, but came from his throat, he whispered, "Thanks for letting me in." I jumped off the couch, heart slamming against my ribs. Cooper, or whatever the hell it was, just sat there, tail slowly thumping the floor. I'm dreaming, I told myself. This is grief. Just grief. A breakdown, that's all. But that whisper had cut through the fog like a blade. It was too clear, too real. I stumbled into the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I could find, spun around, and he was gone. No paw prints, no fur on the couch, no smell, like he'd never been there at all. I didn't sleep the next night, or the one after that. But every night, at exactly 07, I heard the scratching at the door again. Same rhythm, same soft bark when I didn't answer, then silence. On the third night, I waited by the door, knife in hand, no intention of opening it, but I still heard his voice, this time from inside the walls. "You let me in once." I punched a hole in the drywall, trying to find the source. Nothing. I went to the vet, demanded to see Cooper's body. The receptionist looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, but he was cremated yesterday." "Who authorized that?" She checked the file. "You did, Mr. Carver. You signed the paperwork the day he was put down." I hadn't signed anything. I remember leaving in a daze, forgetting my keys, but I never signed a thing. I asked for a copy. There it was, my signature. Only it wasn't mine. I don't write my R's like that. That's when I started locking every door, every window. I salted the thresholds. Burned sage, holy water, everything I could find online, no matter how insane it sounded. The scratching didn't stop, but now it came from different doors. The closet, the attic, once, even from under the bed. Every night, always at 07. And each night, the voice came a little closer. "You let me in once. You can't take it back." On the 5th night, I woke up with him sitting on my chest. He was heavier than he should have been, eyes like molten gold. His jaw hung open, tongue dripping black. I couldn't move. His mouth stretched wider than any dog's ever could, far too wide. He spoke again. "You called me back, begged for me. I'm yours now." Then he leaned in until his teeth brushed my cheek. Forever. I blacked out. The next morning, I tried to leave. I packed a bag, got in my van, and drove until the low fuel light came on. Every road looped back, every single one. The signs changed, but I always ended up on Ashwood Lane, my street. The sun never moved in the sky. The dashboard clock stayed frozen at 11:59. I stopped at the gas station at the end of the street. It was boarded up, covered in dust. The lights inside flickered, but no one was there. On my way out, I saw the posters. Missing pets. Dozens of them. Eyes scratched out. Smiles twisted. Some of them looked like they were still smiling after death. When I got back home, the front door was wide open. Cooper was waiting inside. He wasn't pretending anymore. His mouth was stretched into a silent scream of a grin, far too wide. Patches of his fur were sloughing off, wet and rotting. Bone glinted beneath, and his shadow, God, his shadow writhed like a dying spider. I collapsed on the porch. He stepped past me, sat at the top of the stairs. Then he spoke again. But this time, it wasn't his voice. It was mine. I missed you so much. I stopped fighting after that. I started feeding him. Not food. He didn't want that. He wanted memories. Smells. Pieces of the old life. I found my dad's old flannel shirt up in the attic, and he chewed it for hours. I watched the light fixtures flicker when he got excited. Sometimes he brought me things. Bones. Teeth. None of them were his. Once, a collar. It said Milo. I never had a Milo. It's the 11th night. I don't know what's real anymore. I haven't seen the sun in 2 days. Every clock in the house shows a different time. My phone won't turn on. He's sitting next to me as I write this, his breath cold against my neck. Every so often, he licks my ear and whispers things I don't want to hear. Things about where he came from. Things about what I let in. He says I opened the door, not just a wooden one, but the other one, the thin one, the one that keeps things out. The kind of door that should never be opened once it's closed. He says I wanted him back so badly that something else used his shape to get through. He says he's grateful. And now he wants to show me how to open more doors. He wants to teach me how to knock back. I tried to burn the house down. I doused every room in gasoline, lit a match, and watched the flames crawl up the walls. Then I woke up, back in bed, Cooper on my chest, smiling. "You can't burn a door that's already open," he whispered. I've started hearing more scratching, beneath the floorboards, in the attic, down the drains. I don't think the door only opened one way. I don't think I just let Cooper in. And I think I'm changing too. My reflection doesn't blink when I do. My voice echoes, even when I whisper. My dreams are full of howling. Cooper sits beside me at night, staring at the walls, waiting. Last night, I heard another voice. A child's voice. Outside. "Cooper," it said. "Come on, boy." I opened the door without thinking. Something ran into the woods. It wasn't Cooper, but he followed it, laughing. He came back this morning, his fur darker, his teeth sharper. "Thanks for letting me in," he said again. Then with a wink, "We brought more. If you're reading this, don't open the door. No matter how familiar the bark sounds, no matter how much you miss them, no matter what they say, grief is a door, and something is always waiting on the other side, scratching." Story 7. My friend showed me a new dating app for lonely people. There are some very strange rules in the terms and conditions. I don't get it. I swirl my straw around in my iced pecan latte. Not the manliest drink choice, but Maya had turned me on to them, and now I couldn't go back to whatever I'd ordered before. I would never be the same. "Yeah, Josh." Amaya had chimed in, leaning back in her chair almost precariously, the front legs tilting off the ground. Me neither. It looks like Grinder. I snorted. It does kind of look like Grinder. How would you even know that, Cooper? I mean, I've seen what Grinder looks like. Have you never seen what Grinder looks like? My head whipped between them, searching for understanding in Josh's face and sympathy in Amaya's. I only found laughter. I crossed my arms and sulked. "Guys, I know it's weird," Josh finally continued. He pinched his baseball cap by the bill and spun around so it was backwards, leaning forward and holding out his phone for us to look at. Doing that was almost a nervous tic for him. It had to be 50 times a day that he rotated his hat like that when he was wearing one. just to rotate it back again. Sometimes I joke that he was going to make his hair curly like that. I don't even know who made this. Jackson said they found it on the dark web or something. Your cousin Jackson? You're not really falling for that, are you? Amaya smirked at him, leaning on her elbows and chewing on her straw. He's definitely messing with you. He just glared at her and kept going. Some people think it's like promotion for a movie or something. Some people think the people on here are dead. Dead? Like ghosts or something. He shrugged loosely, his face blank. To know, there's just a lot of theories. They could also just be bots or something. So what's the point of using this? I chimed in, slurping loudly at the last hints of liquid in my cup. I got a couple dirty looks from some old ladies at the table next to us, and I smiled apologetically. You're just making it sound sketchy. Josh grinned, coming alive. He rotated his hat again and leaned in closer, like he was going to tell us a juicy secret. Amaya and I glanced at each other. People are finding love, apparently, he whisper yelled. Like, on the app? With the ghosts/bots. He shook his head. No, not exactly. I think the point of the app is that it figures out your type or something. And then you just find someone exactly like that. They're drawn to you or something. So now this is some tarot card universe soulmate bullshit. Amaya always joked like this, but I could tell she was getting legitimately a little frustrated with him. I didn't blame her. Her emotions have been all over the place lately, since she and Sean broke up. I felt guilty for feeling a little relieved they finally ended it, considering it meant she had more time to hang out with us, because I knew she was having a horrible time with it. They had been together for 2 years. Things like that were a big deal. I, on the other hand, hadn't had a girlfriend in years. I hadn't even been on a date in longer than I wanted to admit. And even if I could get a date, I didn't think I'd know what to do with the opportunity. I thought college would be a constant party where I was meeting girls left and right, but so far, I had been sorely mistaken. I couldn't lie. What Josh was saying sounded appealing in theory. If it was real, that was, which it wasn't. Listen, Josh said, offering her a crooked smile. I know it sounds fucking insane. It definitely is insane. I haven't even gotten to the weirdest part yet. What's the weirdest part then, Josh? She brushed some dark brown curls away from her eyes, scowling at her own iced latte. Spit it out. Check this out. He held out his phone again, and Amaya and I both leaned in to look. It was the same screen he'd shown us before, the one that looked a little bit like Grindr with a black background, and the only thing on the page were a list of open chats. He tapped on a little question mark in the top right corner, and that was when the terms and conditions popped up. Terms and conditions. 1. If someone messages you that you would like to speak with, you must reply within 10 minutes of receiving the message. 2. If you do not wish to speak to someone, you must repeat this phrase word for word. Thank you for your interest, but I am not open at this time. I wish you good luck with finding what you want. 3. If you wish to stop speaking to someone, repeat the phrase above. 4. If someone continues messaging you after you have sent the phrase above, get the high ground, lock all doors and windows, and contact customer support immediately. Delete the app. Do not already download the app. 5. Do not message anyone between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. 6. Always say goodnight before you go to sleep. 7. Always say good morning as soon as you wake up. 8. Always be polite. 9. Do not send more than one message at a time. 10. Do not offer them anything to eat. 11. Do not agree to meet up with anyone on the app. Do not tell them where you are, even if they say that they already know. Do not invite them into your home. 12. If they are near your home, get a high ground, lock all doors and windows, and contact customer support immediately. Delete the app. Do not already download the app. 13. Do not let them trick you. They will try. 14. We are not responsible for any negative consequences of using the app. Amaya and I just stared at the page for a long time, both of our eyes skimming over the words once, twice, 3 times. Finally, Amaya leaned back, rubbing at her face with the palms of her hands. This has to be a joke. Josh shrugged, setting his phone down. It's crazy, I know. Did you agree to all of that? I asked him. I felt a little uneasy, my stomach churning. The pecan latte wasn't sitting well anymore. Have you been using this? He shrugged again, now looking a little bit embarrassed. Listen, I know it sounds insane, but it's just for fun. I just want to see if it's real. Jackson met this girl like a week after using the app for the first time, and I met her, and she's really normal and nice. I find that hard to believe. Amaya's face was red, and she kept nervously tucking her hair behind her ears. Look, if you're messing with me, like if you're both in on this is a really shitty prank to pull on me right now. No. Both Josh and I cried out at the same time, getting a couple more weird looks. No, Amaya, it's not a prank, Josh finished. I promise. It's just something weird I found, and I wanted to tell you guys about it. Whatever, she huffed, pushing to her feet and slinging her bag over her shoulder. Just whatever. I don't feel good. I'll talk to you guys later. Amaya. I trailed off as she slammed her half-empty coffee cup into the trash and briskly strode toward the door. Josh and I shared a look. Dude, I swear I wasn't trying to mess with her, he said after a while, searching my face to gauge my belief in him. I nodded, wiping my sweaty palms off on my jeans. I know. It's okay. She just isn't doing well right now. I hesitated for a long moment, chewing on my bottom lip before I spoke again. Jackson really met someone. I downloaded the app that night. I wasn't proud of it, but my curiosity became stronger than my uneasiness, and as embarrassing as it was to admit, I was getting desperate. I wanted to meet someone nice and pretty that I could go places with, and I wasn't having luck anywhere else. I considered it a win-win. If this app was just some bullshit prank, then we could get a good laugh out of it. And if it wasn't, that meant it was real. Josh had sent a link to our group chat with Amaya, and she immediately responded by reacting to the message with a thumbs down. That meant that, even if she was still a little peeved, at the very least she wasn't upset anymore. It was a good sign. I pressed on the link and then agreed to download, crossing my fingers and praying for no horrible virus. The app really was incredibly bare bones. Nothing but a messaging screen, which was empty so far in my case. There wasn't anything else to look at, other than the terms and conditions, which I read again. No one to swipe on, no bios to read, nothing. I was brushing my teeth when I got my first message. My phone buzzed, and I nearly choked on my toothpaste when I read the notification. Noel, hello handsome. For some reason, the smiley emoticon unnerved me. I checked the time, 11:30 p.m., so I was fine on that rule. I pressed on the message, and her profile popped up. There was no bio, just a name and a picture to look at. I studied it closely, my eyebrows cinching together. The picture was of a girl, looking definitely somewhere close to my age. She had shoulder-length curly dark hair and dark skin, and she was posing in a yellow field, wearing a flowery dress. It looked normal to me at first, but the closer I looked, the more off it felt. Her smile looked stiff, almost like it was painted on, and something about her eyes wasn't quite right. Her pupils looked strange, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly how. Something about that picture filled me with a sense of dread that I couldn't fully place either. I panicked, and I checked the terms and conditions again before composing my message before the 10 minutes could pass, just in case. Cooper, thank you for your interest, but I am not open at this time. I wish you luck in finding what you want. I waited. 3 little typing bubbles popped up, and then they disappeared. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I sighed in relief and shut my phone off. I woke up to 2 more messages from other women. One was named Alyssa, and one was named Jody. My heart began to race. They had messaged during the night, so it had been 10 minutes before I replied, right? The words scrolled across the backs of my eyes like subtitles. You must reply within 10 minutes of receiving the message. Had I broken that rule? But then again, I wasn't supposed to message back at night, so surely it didn't count. I typed my responses, not bothering to look too closely at their profiles yet, not wanting to psych myself out. Alyssa, hi. Cooper, hi. Good morning, smiley face. Jody, hello, how are you today? Cooper, hello, good morning. I'm doing well. How are you? I tried to match their energy. I made sure to be polite, and I also made sure to say good morning. I couldn't get my heart rate to slow down while I got ready for work, and I couldn't get over the dread I had felt when I thought I might have broken the rule. I knew it probably wasn't real, but what if it was? What would happen to me if I didn't follow the terms and conditions? At work, I got in trouble more than once for checking my phone between waiting tables. I couldn't help it, even if it was a stupid joke. I didn't want to find out. I only got one message from someone new, someone named Sonny, and I caught it after 8 minutes had already passed since it was sent. I was anxious and restless all day, all the way until it was nearly midnight, when I could finally relax a little. The other girls had messaged me a couple times throughout the day, and I had replied politely, asking them questions about things they like to do and places they like to go. Everything really seemed fairly average, besides a very slight hint of stiffness in the way they talked, and the strange qualities about all of their profile pictures. Maybe they really were just well-trained bots. The thought made me feel a little better. They probably weren't even real. The only thing out of the ordinary was one message from Alyssa. Alyssa, would you want to take me out to dinner some night this week? Get something to eat? Of course, in normal circumstances. This wouldn't have been a strange thing to say at all, but I remembered it at the last second. Do not offer them anything to eat. I told her I was extra busy that week, and I just wanted to get to know her first. She had typed for a long time before responding with, "Okay." Before it could get to midnight, I said my goodnights and let out a long, shaky breath. I called Josh. "Hey man, how's it going?" He sounded out of breath. He must have been on his nightly run. I had tried telling him it was crazy to go on runs in the middle of the night, and so had Amaya, but he didn't listen. He was a white, straight, mostly muscular man. He had nothing to be scared of. He was invincible. This app is stressful, dude. I lay back in my bed, closing my eyes. It's taking a lot out of me. I heard Josh laugh on the other end, slightly choppy and still breathless. Don't take it too seriously. Like I was saying, it could definitely just be some movie promotion or something. Also, you get used to it. I have. Yeah. I trailed off. Have you talked to Maya? A little. Why? I'm just worried about her. She's been so out of it lately. Yeah, we should do something for her, man. Like plan something. I couldn't help but smile. The three of us had been inseparable since freshman orientation, when we had been put in a group. I had thought it wouldn't last, that it would just be a case of freshman friend group, but it had. I felt lucky to have found both of them in such a big school, in such a big area. Yeah, we should. Let's hang out tomorrow. Sure thing. I went to bed that night feeling a little bit better and a little less anxious. I woke up to tons of messages. A couple of new ones, but mostly pages of ones from the girls I had already spoken to. Alyssa, Cooper, Alyssa, don't go to bed, talk to me, Cooper. Alyssa, I miss you. Alyssa, can I come over? Alyssa, I'm moving soon. Could you help me move? Alyssa, you could make me dinner. Alyssa, Cooper, wake up. Alyssa, I'm all alone. Alyssa, and I'm cold. Alyssa, it's so cold. I shivered. I didn't even bother reading through the other messages. Just responded with a good morning and apologized for not responding the night before. I wasn't sure this app was for me. The next few days went by without much of a hitch. The girls on the app were creepy, but they seemed harmless, and I was careful to follow all of the rules. I kept telling myself that even if these girls freaked me out, they weren't even the ones I would end up with. If this app worked, I would meet someone who was perfect to me very, very soon, and then I could delete it and forget about it forever. I would give it another week or so. Then I was going to give up. That was until Josh came into my job on a Wednesday. I saw him waiting outside the break room, his face pointed down, wringing his hands anxiously. The first thing I noticed was that he had no hat on. The second thing was that he was crying. What's wrong? I asked him, frowning and looking him over. Is everything okay, dude? He shook his head, finally looking up and meeting my eyes. I saw horror in them and some other emotion that I hadn't seen from him maybe ever. Amaya is missing. Cooper. She's gone. One thought struck me all at once. The first stupid thought I had. Did she download it too? Everything after that felt like a huge gray blur. My manager gave me the day off work, and I went with Josh, following him to the police station. I sat in their gray room. I answered their questions. I tried not to cry when they told me that her roommate had reported her missing after she hadn't seen her for over 24 hours. I tried not to panic when they told me her roommate also found the window broken that morning and some blood staining the carpet, but there was no body down on the ground, no other traces of anything. I felt so guilty. I should have texted her more. I should have been calling and checking in on her. I had just been so distracted by work and by the stupid app. The only thing keeping us from ruling it a suicide is the lack of a body. A female cop told me. Clearly try to be gentle. She placed a hand on my arm. Her roommate tells us she was going through a breakup. I felt myself filled with painful, searing rage. Amaya wouldn't do that. I looked the cop in the eyes, trying to make the eye contact burn. I promise. I could tell she didn't believe me. I stayed over at Josh's place. We both shuffled around like zombies, basically communicating only through either grunts of acknowledgement or shaky, quiet conversations about any updates. There were none to talk about. I completely forgot about the app. I forgot about it until about a week after she disappeared. My phone had been buzzing nonstop the entire week, but most of the time, I had it entirely shut off. Some of my messages had been from my family, Amaya's family, and our classmates and friends, and some had been from the stupid app, but I couldn't bring myself to reply to many of them at all. But then I got a notification that caught my eye. Amaya, hi Cooper. It took me longer than I would like to admit to realize what I was looking at. At first I thought it was a text message, and my heart soared up into my throat. Then I realized it was the app. When I opened it up, I was bombarded with messages, both from new people and old ones. The old fear I felt about the app began to resurface, bubbling up like bile. Alyssa, Cooper, I'm coming over. Alyssa, I can come over now. Alyssa, I know where you are. Alyssa, can I come over? Alyssa, answer me. Cooper, I'm going to come over. Jody, meet me. Jody, please meet me. Jody, please meet me. Jody now. Jody now. Jody. And Sonny, cold. I ignored all of them, despite the horrible, sick feeling in my gut. I opened the one from Amaya. I looked at her profile picture. It was her. It was a picture of her I had never seen before. It was dark outside and taken with flash. Her hair was down, falling around her face in a way that she couldn't stand. Her chin tilted a little to the side. She was smiling in the way that first girl was. Wrong. Stiff and strange and wrong. That wasn't her smile, and those weren't her eyes. They were far too dull and very slightly pointing in different directions. Cooper, Amaya? Cooper, is that really you? Cooper, are you okay? The three bubbles popped up, then disappeared, then popped up again. I stood up, beginning to pace. Should I call Josh? Should I call the police? Was this some sort of sick joke? Finally, my phone buzzed. Amaya, I am near your home. I started to cry. I couldn't help it. I wanted to throw my phone. I wanted to break it. Cooper, where are you? What happened to you? Amaya, 10 feet. I stared at the message. I felt like my vision was going out. Cooper, 10 feet from where? Amaya, it's cold here. I swallowed hard. It felt like swallowing rocks. Cooper, thank you for your interest, but I am not open at this time. I wish you luck in finding what you want. Amaya, 6 feet. Amaya, cold. Amaya, and dark. I knew what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to lock the doors and the windows, get to high ground, and call customer support. But I couldn't. All I could do was stare. Stare at my phone, at her messages. Frozen like a deer in headlights. And the headlights were coming so fast, I couldn't see her breathe or think. She was typing again. As my phone buzzed, my blood ran completely cold. It was 1:56 a.m. No one was there. No one but me and whatever it was. I wasn't even sure if I could stop shaking enough to call the police. And I definitely couldn't hide. Not then. And I had broken nearly all of the rules. Amaya let me in. Cooper. Amaya, I have to show you where it took me. I finally managed to hide. I'm hiding now in my attic. I can hear it down there, dragging itself from room to room. My phone is going to die and none of my calls will go through. But I had to write this down. I had to tell someone. Josh, if you read this, I hope you're okay. I hope you follow the rules. I don't know where Amaya is, but that's not Amaya. And if you see me again, I'm not sure it'll be me either. I'm sorry. It's typing again. I've broken one last rule. I didn't delete the app. Wish me luck. Story 8. I work as a clown for a carnival in the middle of the desert. There's a man who clings to my ceiling and watches me as I sleep. His limbs are smooth and gray with an ash-like quality. His skin reminds me of the wings of a moth. He has no mouth, nose, or ears. He only has eyes twice as big as a normal human's. They do not blink, but they shimmer like moons reflected in rain puddles. I don't know why he's there. There must be some reason why he takes some interest in me. I wish I could understand it. He's not always stationary. Occasionally, he'll sit on the edge of my bed while I take off my makeup. Once, he even cocked his head to the side, as if taking note of the curious ritual that is my nightly death. I do indeed die every night when I take off my face. I am born again in the morning, though I think born is too small a word. It's much more like a cruel reincarnation that I'm forced to go through every time the velour and silks fall off my body. My hat and nose are kept on my vanity like icons or patron saints, though I feel no comfort placing them there. It's not where they belong. I wonder if the faceless man knows these are my thoughts. I don't know. I've never bothered asking. He never bothers asking me anything, and it's my room, anyhow. When I lie down in my cotton sheets and old down pillow, ready for burial under the cover night, there is no one to place coins on my eyes for ferrymen. I am left to languish in a dreamless purgatory. No Hermes or Valkyrie leads me to death. No force pulls me from the bardo. I am left to wait in the tomb with my visitor looking down on me. Perhaps his eyes are the only coins I receive. Perhaps he'll come down one day and place them upon my own. I've decided to name him Gooby. I do not like instant coffee. It's disingenuous and tastes like burnt butter. That said, I drink it every morning. This is for several reasons, the least of which is that a singular mug appears on my end table daily, bearing the inscription, "Clowning Around." The other reasons are personal and have to do with love languages, such as gift-giving, and my general laziness in preparing anything else to drink. I think Gooby prepares it for me. I don't know. I didn't see him sitting on the edge of my bed that morning, so I imagine he's off doing something. Maybe he crochets. I wonder if he'd make me a hat. As I take my first sip of coffee and let its bitter warmth infest my veins, I stare at myself in the mirror and feel my blood run cold. This happens every morning without fail, and it never ceases to terrify me to my core. It is the kind of petrifying fear that you only get when noticing a figure at the corner of your vision. A stranger is watching me through the glass, drinking instant coffee out of a mug labeled Nuere Ninwalsi. I don't recognize his face. I have a medical condition. Probably should have mentioned that, but better late than never. Doctors say it's something similar to the personalization derealization disorder, but it's not quite that. You typically feel like you're in a dreamlike state with DPDR, and everything is supposed to move more slowly. I don't feel like I'm in a dream at all. Everything moves the same. Everything feels so vivid and focused that I sometimes almost vomit from motion sickness. No, I feel like I'm awake, aware, and painfully receptive to the horrible things of my reality. It's just my face. I never recognize my face. It's never the same to me. I can't tell if it switches forms or my memory is simply that bad, but I am never at ease with it. My makeup is the only thing that calms me down. I start my ritual the same every morning. First is the white makeup, the canvas, the blank slate from which I carve my visage. Then comes the black, void, deeper than night and shadow, festering like a ripe spawn of the depths. Then I draw a little shamrock on my cheek, because I like green. Finally, I force on my red eyebrows and smile. I apply enough powder to last through a hurricane, and finally, I'm ready to go. I step out of my trailer and into the desert that I call home. What I stated in the title is true. I reside in a permanent carnival fixture that rests on the side of a near endless stretch of highway in the middle of the desert. I have no idea what state I'm in, nor if I'm even in America. What I do know is that any mail I get is completely unmarked, save for my name, and always appears at the doorstep of my trailer every week, anchored under a rock. I'm fairly certain the boss reads my mail, which is why my name is always misspelled on an envelope. But I don't care. I cook for myself, clean up after myself, and live alone in a trailer that I'm almost certain used to be a drug den. I cleaned it up, got rid of all the stains in the carpet, and now it is mine. I do find the occasional needle or bone every once in a while, but no home is perfect, especially around here. I'm not completely devoid of supplies, of course. There's a gas station about a mile down the road run by an elderly couple who swear I'm not the strangest thing they've seen walking into their doors at night. I am apparently the friendliest, which is worrying in its own regard. I use them to stock up on basic groceries and toiletries to get by, which is convenient considering that my pay is what many would consider abysmal. That said, in the instance that the boss sees this and decides to dock me for complaining, I am joking. I don't have much I need to buy anyway. And scary as it may be, delivery services do still work out here. But that is my existence, and one that I am stuck with. I have a gigantic orange tricycle that I ride when I don't want to walk, and a comfy set of size 20 shoes that get me the rest of the way. All in all, it's a steady job, but one I find taxing on the best days. I'll summarize it like this. I am a clown who does not talk. I never talk. I'm half convinced I can't. But even if I wanted to try, it wouldn't be with the people around here. Most of my co-workers are fine people as they are. But sometimes the scarier things come in the form of the guests. One of my talents is balloon animals. I can make almost anything proficiently. Sometimes I'll get the occasional person who wants to try and challenge me, and they'll try to order off the menu I carry around with my balloon bag. Many times they're innocent enough. Several children want their favorite cartoon characters or Tommy guns, or insert exotic animal here. But on occasion, the request can get a tad morbid. Today, I remember one corpulent little boy stopping me on my way to clean out the petting zoo to make such a request. "Can you make a spine?" he asked me. I stared at him for a second before raising my question mark sign. "You know," he repeated, "a spine? Like what's in your back?" The stare continued as a couple in matching Hawaiian shirts walked up behind him. They were assumed to be his parents, but they did not attempt to dissuade him. "Carter," said the woman in a distinctly shrill Minnesota accent, "don't be silly." "Carter, you know better," said the man with an almost shriller accent. "You have to be more specific. What kind of spine?" "Oh," the boy said with a wide smile. "Duh. Sorry, Mr. Clown. Can I have a human spine, please?" I kept the question mark sign up. "Oh, it doesn't have to have a skull attached." The man laughed. Sorry for confusion. "Just the spine itself would be nice for the boy." "Oh, maybe a pelvis," the woman added. "Good eating on one of those. Could you do that, Mr. Clown?" By this point, I had retrieved my whiteboard and expo marker to try and write out a more sophisticated response. But the woman cut me off. "You know," she said, reaching into her beach bag. "Kind of like this?" Out of the bag, she proceeded to pull out a yellow spine, at least a meter in length. It was old, though not dusty, and had several gnarled splinters coming off its vertebrae. I was hesitant to ask where she'd gotten it, but the man spoke up next to her. "Oh, would you look at that, hon?" he said, all sentimental. "That's from our first road trip. In it? What was his name?" "Joe." "No, it wasn't Joe." "Hank." "Dillian," said the boy. "You told me about that one." The boy's father ruffled his shaggy hair as he adjusted his sunglasses. "That's it. Wow. Look at the kid on this brain, hon. So mindful." "He sure is," the woman said. "That trip was before you were even born." "Ah, good memories. Good memories." The father looked back at me with a smile. "So what do you say, Mr. Clown? Spine sound good?" He held out a 20, and if I were a prouder man, I would have been more apprehensive at taking it. But a 20 is a 20. I made the best spine I could, using every shade of white and bone yellow I could think of, and in less than a minute, the boy was holding his latex prize and beaming like it was Christmas. The parents thanked me and parted ways, and I can't recall seeing them the rest of the day. I went about my normal route to the petting zoo, the Ferris wheel, the Hall of Mirrors, etc., and it wasn't until this evening that I heard of anything wrong. A sheriff's deputy was at the gates by 6 o'clock and was speaking sternly with the head manager. The manager, Bill, an older man who always wore a striped jacket and straw boater hat, was making every disarming gesture in the book as he conversed with the man. Eventually, the deputy left, and Bill locked the gates behind him. He passed by and gave a bright, "Evening, Bubbles," but I stopped it with my question sign. "Oh, that?" he said, smiling. "It's nothing, just something for the boss to handle." I gave the sign another shake. "Oh, Bubs," he said, checking over his shoulder before leaning in. "They're just looking for one of the teenagers from back in town. That's all." He straightened his bow tie. "You know, Bradley, who works the tickets at the Ferris wheel? His folks called the sheriff and said he was supposed to be home hours ago. Never did clock out. Come to think of it, well, I don't know. He only tore tickets for one family today. Great tippers, by the way. And, well," he paused and held up his hands defensively. "I'm rambling. Point is, it's nothing for you to worry about. Go get some rest. We still have a few weeks until tourist season starts up again. Savor it all while you can." With that, he was off, and I was left feeling for the 20 in my pocket. There was nothing to be done. At the end of the day, there was no one to tell, and I didn't even have a name or vehicle to attach to any floating suspicions. Not to mention, it was getting late, and the gas station was at least half an hour away by trike. So I stowed my balloons, unlocked my ride from its fence post, and took off down the road. The gas station's glow was a flylight in the distance, and I was a moth with $20 to spend. Most children on a long car ride. For whatever reason, imagine some kind of being that runs alongside them on the road. It's always moving at impossible speeds, keeping time with every stop, turn, and acceleration, pacing like a silent wolf through a deep bed of snow. I never had one of those as a child, but I do have one now, more or less. As I race my trike through the obsidian night, a single LED headlight gleaming, I sometimes see a pale figure, stark white and tall, bounding on the horizon toward the road. Sometimes, when I ride slower, I swear I can hear him howling something. He seems urgent, panicked, even, but I can't make out his face. He's a blip in the twilight of the desert. A single pale flame shimmering on a backdrop of a purple void. If I wait even longer, his mournful voice sounds familiar to me. But even then, I cannot recognize him. I've tried to name him, but nothing sticks. Chad didn't work. Didn't have the right mouthfeel. Neither did Otis or Wheeler. He's such a simple-looking thing, and those are always the hardest to name. I've just started calling him that guy, and that works about as well as anything. He's always gone when I make it to the gas station, but he reappears on my rides back, still in the distance and still running. That guy is odd, for sure, but in all the years I've seen him, he's never done me a bad turn. His presence, even if unsettling, remind me that I'm not alone on my nightly ride. I blew him a kiss tonight in a dramatic fashion before entering my trailer. His howling evaporated as my door slammed shut. I brought Gooby back some peanut M&Ms and left them on my dresser with a note saying they were his. I didn't really think about how he'd eat them, seeing as he has no mouth, but I figured it was a thought that counted. I performed my ritual and stared briefly at the stranger in the mirror before me, trying to take in any solid feature, but I couldn't. I shivered and went to bury myself in the covers of my bed, but was met by something unexpected. There, neatly folded on my pillow, was a crocheted cap with a tassel on the end. It was a handsome thing, and only vaguely smelled of vinegar. I put on, and that was enough inspiration to get me to write this. Long post, I know, but hey, I have a new hat. I think it's rather nice of Gooby to do. And I wanted to brag on him. If he does anything else brag-worthy, I'll be sure to post again. In the meantime, wish me luck and pray to whatever you may believe in that the gas station gets a new instant ramen flavor in soon. I'm getting tired of shrimp. Thanks for reading this far. Also, on a separate note, if you meet a Midwestern couple in Hawaiian shirts, maybe try being somewhere else. or make a balloon animal for them. Good night.